Well, hi, it's Rick Gagey. And it's Valentine's Day. And I want to talk about the fact that today was my friend Peter Valentine McLaughlin, or his nickname is Peavy, was his birthday today. And I got to Zoom call with he and his son, Steve Whitfield. And Peter and I have known each other for almost 60 years. And Peter is 90 something, 94, 96 or something like that. And in the wintertime, he lives in a assisted living place in Toronto. And in the summertime, he goes over to Toronto Island and he lives with his adopted son, Steve Whitfield, and Steve's partner, Julie Ganton. And it was so wonderful to see Peter. I hadn't seen him for a year. Was a really amazing young guy. When I met him, he was at Queen's University getting a doctorate or a master's or something in English literature. And he'd graduated with some degree or other from the London School of Economics. And his family were Catholics, Roman Catholics, and he had all kinds of brothers and sisters. And we were talking today about the fact that when he was a little baby, a young child, a piece of somebody else's house came flying, crashing through the ceiling, because that was the first time the Germans bombed the Nazis. It wasn't the Germans; it was the Nazis bombed London. And very shortly after that, he was loaded onto a train and sent into the country to a family he didn't know. And he lived there because they were afraid the children would get killed when the Nazis were bombing London. And Peter had an amazing life, and he was an amazing man and a very good writer, so smart. He worked for a while for the British tax services, but it was killing his spirit. So I forget why he came to Canada, and he met me at Queen's University. We met at Queen's University, and I was really messed up because my first marriage was falling apart because I didn't know how to do marriage, and I was not a good husband and not a good father. And anyway, we met and we became friends. And then I met him again when my life was really falling apart, and he saved my life. He came to my house and he my apartment. He banged on the door, and I finally got out of bed. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning. I was so depressed. And I opened the door and he said, "I demand a rematch." Because the night before I had been drunk and I had been at a party, and I didn't like parties, but I went to them. And he was the same way, and we found a chessboard, and so we played chess, and I beat him. And the first thing he said when he answered the door in the morning was, "I demand a rematch." And I was like, I can't deal with this. And so he came in, set up the board, and he said, "I'll cook us some breakfast." And he walked into the kitchen and he saw piles of garbage that I hadn't taken out because I was so bummed out. And he opened up the refrigerator and it was like, there was no edible food left in it. And he said, "Well, I'll be back." And so he went out and he arrived back with 2 bags of groceries. And then he washed the dishes and he made us breakfast, and he sat down, and over breakfast, he beat me so fast playing chess. And then he said, I demand a rematch. And so I played him again. And we played, that was from like maybe by then 12:30, 1 o'clock. We played until about 9 o'clock at night. And he beat me every time. And at the end of the night, he said, there, I feel better. That was a mistake. You beat me by mistake. And he came to my house every day and we played chess. And he eventually got me to go out for walks. And he brought me back to life. And he was the most compassionate, non-judgmental guy that I'd ever met. And the stories went on, and over the next course of years, we did crazy things. And we did simple things like we'd go for walks by Lake Ontario, and we'd just throw a stick out and then throw stones see if we could hit the stick. And we were laughing and talking about literature and politics, economics, psychology, and eventually he got a job as a high school teacher, and lots of funny stories about him as a high school teacher. And then he got a job teaching at the Ryerson Institute of Technology. He was teaching English, and then I moved to the island, Toronto Island, and he would go to England every year, and so I would drive him to the airport and pick him up at the airport. And once I picked him up at the airport from England, and I said, where are you living? He said, I don't know. I said, well, come back and stay at my place. The place is a mess. We're constructing it. There was a big, huge pile of drywall in the middle of the living room. And I said, you can sleep there. And he said, okay, I'll get a place tomorrow. Well, he was there for like 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months. And then eventually he found his own place on Toronto Island. Eventually he built a house there. And eventually he met Judy, who was an actress. And they had a really fine relationship. And he has many, many fine friends. And of course, when you get old, your friends die. That's one of the things about, you got to keep getting younger friends to replace the ones who are dying. And Peter just was so full of life, but so idiosyncratic. Like he was, some people would say he was weird, but I didn't think he was weird. I thought he was Peter, Peavy, as we used to call him. And so then Peter got so he couldn't look after himself, and Steve started going over to his house and looking after him, and then it looked like Peter was going to have to go into a nursing home. And on Toronto Island, you lose your house when you move away, unless something else. But then Peter got the idea that if he adopted Steve Whitfield, then Steve would be his legal son and therefore be entitled to keep living in Peter's house, or he could use Peter's house however he wanted to. So, yay for Peter Valentine P.V. McLaughlin, a great man, and I've been encouraging him to tell his stories and read his short stories onto YouTube videos, but he's a little taciturn about doing that. So maybe someday somebody will read P.V. McLaughlin's stories, because they're all really funny. I mean, this guy had a weird mind, like really weird, so weird that he and I took an art class once, and there was this really far out artist teaching the class, and everybody had to make a painting. So Peter made a painting about a walking, tea drinking chair, and it floored the instructor. The instructor said, "This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen." And he wrote a short story about who was it that married the prince? Sleeping Beauty. And Sleeping Beauty wakes up and marries the prince, and Peter picks the story up and looks at their union over the next 20 years. And it was terrible. So anyway, I hope you had fun listening to this. And I hope you make videos about the relationships and heroes and teachers you've got that make your life easier and teach you how to do whatever. So Peter has been teaching me how to be old, how to get old, how to accept what is. Don't try to pretend that everything's okay when it's not, but laugh about it. And Peter and I love to laugh together. Okay, so keep laughing and look up, just learn to laugh.